Hi, I'm Maura. The day my parents met my husband, they laughed. My sister smirked and said, "You really downgraded, huh?" They praised her for marrying money, and humiliated me for marrying a man with calloused hands and steel in his veins. But then, at that dinner, when her rich husband froze and called my husband boss, that's when every lie, every mask, every smug word shattered. You ever wonder what happens when the ones who looked down on you suddenly have to look up? Before we dive in, tell me, what time are you listening to this and where are you? Drop a comment below. I'd love to know who's with me on this ride. I stood at the bedroom mirror, smoothing out the sleeves of my navy blouse, the one Logan liked most. It wasn't flashy, just clean and pressed, but it felt like armor. The kind you wear when you know you're walking into something sharp. He stood behind me, fixing the collar of his gray button-up, his dark eyes meeting mine in the reflection. "You sure about this?" I asked, my voice quiet, heavy with hesitation. Logan didn't answer right away. He came closer, rested his hands on my shoulders, and said, "You deserve to be seen, Madeline. They don't get to erase you just because you don't fit their picture." I nodded, forcing a half smile. The invitation had come in as a text from Mom. 2 sentences, no warmth, no greeting. "Cassidy's rehearsal dinner is Saturday at 7. It would be good if you came. Not we'd love to see you, not bring Logan, just obligation, dressed as formality." We pulled into the waterfront venue right before sunset. Shem Creek shimmered in the golden light, boats bobbing gently as if mocking my nerves. The restaurant looked elegant, all white lights and sleek wood beams. I adjusted my purse and took a breath before stepping inside. Cassidy spotted us first. She was wearing a champagne-colored dress that probably cost more than our mortgage. Her lips curled, not in a smile, but something between amusement and disdain. "Well, look who showed up," she said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Didn't know they let blue-collar in here." My face flushed. Logan just nodded politely. "Good evening." Dad gave us a once-over and muttered, "You clean up all right." Mom leaned over to Cassidy and whispered something. Cassidy laughed. We were ushered to the far end of the table, down by the window, away from the laughter, the toasts, the heart of the family. I tried to hold a conversation with Logan, but the distance from everyone else felt like a spotlight. Every clink of a fork reminded me that we didn't belong here. Not really. Halfway through the meal, Mom raised her glass and beamed. "To Alex," she said, "a real man. Built himself an empire from nothing." Dad chimed in. "Unlike some people who, well, let's just say they married below their weight class." I blinked. Logan reached for his water, calm as ever. A cousin leaned across the table. "So, Logan, what do you do again?" Before he could answer, Cassidy cut in. "He welds stuff. You know, hot metal, sparks flying, like in the movies." The table burst into chuckles. One of Alex's groomsmen mimed hammering an anvil. Logan just smiled. "Something like that?" I stood up. "Excuse me for a moment," I said, slipping away from the table before the tears in my throat could make an appearance on my face. In the restroom, I gripped the edge of the marble sink and stared at my reflection. My cheeks were pink, not from makeup but humiliation. I wasn't ashamed of Logan, not one bit, but I hated that he had to sit through that, through them. As I stepped out into the hallway, I caught voices drifting from around the corner. "She really downgraded," Cassidy was saying. "Can you imagine welding grease on your sheets? Ugh, I don't even sit on his kind of furniture." Laughter followed. Sharp, mean, like junior high all over again, but somehow crueler when it came from people with adult faces. Something in me snapped. Not in anger, but in decision. I returned to the table, calm, controlled, leaned toward Logan and whispered, "Let's go." He didn't ask questions. He just stood, nodded, and took my hand. We made it halfway down the dining area when a voice broke through the clatter of conversation. "Hi. B-boss?" It was Alex. He was standing, mouth slightly open, the color drained from his face. The entire table turned to look. Cassidy frowned. "Wait, what?" Logan looked at Alex, his voice steady. "Good to see you again, Alex." The room went dead quiet. Cassidy looked between them, her jaw slack. "Boss? Boss?" Logan didn't elaborate. He just adjusted his sleeves and looked toward the exit. The silence wasn't angry or awkward. It was stunned. Mom reached for her wine glass, tapped it against her plate, trying to cover the sound of the unspoken questions. "Wait, what is going on?" Cassidy's hand was still raised mid-gesture, frozen, like she wished she could erase what she just heard. Cassidy's hand was still suspended mid-air, stiff like a photograph frozen in disbelief. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the faint clink of ice melting in someone's untouched glass. Alex was the first to break the silence. "Wait," he laughed nervously, tugging at his collar. "It's just an inside joke. Logan and I worked on a little project together years ago." But Logan didn't play along. He stood beside me, calm as ever, his voice quiet but unmistakably firm. "A little project? Alex, you still owe my company 3 quarterly reports, and 2 follow-ups. You didn't think I'd forget." Alex's face dropped like someone yanked the rug from beneath him. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, glancing around the table as if hoping someone else might speak for him. No one did. I looked at Logan. Not once had he raised his voice. He didn't need to. Cassidy's face had gone pale, the kind of pale that doesn't come from cold or embarrassment. It came from realization. What do you mean, boss?" she asked again, this time almost whispering. Logan turned to her, but it wasn't unkind, just honest. "I own McCready Industrial," he said. "Alex's startup contracts with us. He's pitched 3 prototypes to our Mid-Atlantic division since last fall." A pause stretched so long it nearly snapped. Someone at the far end of the table, one of my cousins, I think, murmured, "Wait, McCready? That's the company with the big robotics arm for the Navy contract, right?" Another cousin, this one a college junior, always on his phone, quickly typed something under the table. He looked up, eyes wide. "Y'all?" he said, lifting his screen just enough for his sister to peek. "He's on Forbes." A gasp. Not loud, but sharp, like air sucked between teeth. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Logan's hand brushed lightly against mine under the table. I held on to that. Like an anchor in the middle of a storm I wasn't the one caught in. Cassidy blinked, her mouth slightly open. "But you weld things," she said weakly, as if saying it out loud would somehow undo the truth. "I started there," Logan replied. "I still do sometimes, when I need to clear my head. But now I sign the contracts that fund the projects your fiancé's company relies on." Across from us, my mother made a sound that was half laugh, half sputter. "Well, why didn't you say anything?" she said, straightening her silverware like it mattered. "We had no idea. You two always came off so humble." Logan looked at her. "That wasn't an accident." My father cleared his throat. "You know," he added, awkwardly attempting a smile, "we could have helped you grow the company. I've got friends in Charleston finance circles, real movers and shakers." That made me speak. "You never asked what he did," I said quietly. "You just assumed." I didn't say more. I didn't need to explain the years of silent dinners, the glances, the way my mother had always introduced Logan as just handy with tools at family gatherings, like he was a project, not a partner. Cassidy suddenly stood, pushing her chair back hard enough to rattle the silverware. "I need a minute," she mumbled, swiping at her cheek. Tears. I don't know if they were real or not. Maybe even she didn't. She walked toward the hallway leading to the restrooms. Her heels clicked like punctuation marks, sharp and uneven. At the table, no one said a word. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the outsider in that room. I felt like the mirror. They were seeing themselves now, not me. Logan leaned in. "We can go. Say the word." But I shook my head, just once, firm. "No," I said. "Let them sit with this." We both sat down again, this time closer together than before. The waiter arrived with the next course, Some kind of scallops, I think, but no one touched their plate. The air was too thick. My father took a long sip of wine. My mother fiddled with the napkin in her lap. Even the cousins stayed quiet, and then, barely above a whisper from the hallway where Cassidy had paused near the entryway, "Did you marry him? Knowing?" I looked up. She wasn't crying anymore. She wasn't shouting either, just staring at me like a stranger. And in that moment, I realized what she really meant. Not, "Did you marry him for money?" but, "Did you know what he was worth when we treated him like he wasn't?" Cassidy's voice was barely a whisper. "Did you marry him, knowing?" I didn't answer. Not out of pride. Just, what was there left to say? Logan looked at her, not unkindly, but with the kind of calm that unnerved people like Cassidy. Then he reached for my hand, steady, warm, and we walked out. Past the white linen tables, past the silent stairs. The air outside was cooler than it had been earlier. Or maybe I just breathed easier once we left the room. 2 days later, an envelope arrived. It was heavy. Cream cardstock, thick enough to feel like it wanted to be important. Cassidy's formal engagement invitation, engraved lettering, gold trim, complete with RSVP instructions that sounded more like instructions than a welcome. No personal note, no warmth. Just my name, misspelled slightly, and the address to some estate out on Isle of Palms. Later that evening, I mentioned it while Logan was flipping through some blueprints on the porch. "They invited you?" he asked without looking up. I shrugged. "Technically." He paused, gave me a slow glance. "Do you actually want to go?" I leaned against the railing, watching the sun start to dip behind the oaks. "I don't want to be there for them, but I do want to see it with my own eyes. The life she chose, the house she laughed at me for dreaming about." Logan folded the paper, set it down. "Then we go, but on our terms." The drive out to Isle of Palms took just under an hour. Past the marshes, through the stretch of highway flanked by wildflowers and whispering trees. Logan drove one of his quieter cars, nothing flashy. He always said power didn't need a spotlight. The estate appeared suddenly, white and sprawling like something from a magazine. Polished limestone steps, a winding driveway lined with flowering hedges, and a front facade that glared instead of welcomed. It wasn't a home. It was a statement. A valet stepped up as we parked. I caught the glance he gave Logan, then the double-take when Logan tossed him the keys with a nod. Not arrogance, just ease. Inside, chandeliers glimmered overhead, and a server offered us champagne before we even had time to blink. Cassidy stood near the grand staircase, draped in a gown that screamed desperation to impress. She noticed us. Her eyes tightened, but her smile stayed fixed, like porcelain under pressure. Alex's parents were already holding court, entertaining a cluster of men in navy suits and women in silk. His mother spotted Logan first. Her lips twitched, then straightened. "Well," she said, approaching with a drink in hand, "so nice of you both to come. We didn't expect the entire company." Logan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just here for the view." A man nearby chuckled and nodded toward the banister. "Say, did you weld those handrails yourself? Real hands-on type, huh?" Before I could respond, Logan simply replied, "No, but my team designed the structural grid beneath the entire foundation." He let it hang there. People laughed nervously. Cassidy approached just in time to catch the tail end of that exchange. She kissed the air beside my cheek. "Glad you could make it," she said. "I wasn't sure you'd feel comfortable." "I'm fine," I answered. "We just came to observe excellence." Her jaw ticked. "Let's get started, shall we?" Dinner was served on the patio, long white tables beneath glowing bulbs, lobster, steak, and smiles that could cut glass. People laughed louder than necessary. Toasts were made over nothing. I stayed quiet, not out of discomfort, but because sometimes silence speaks loudest. Then Cassidy stood, raising her glass. "To love," she began, "and to marrying up. Finding someone who elevates you beyond where you started." My fingers brushed the stem of my wine glass, but I didn't lift it. Alex jumped in. "And to proving that love and status can go hand in hand. Right, babe?" Logan tilted his head. just slightly. "Interesting," he said smoothly. "Since your fiancé signed off on 3 faulty spec sheets we rejected last quarter. Sloppy work, if I'm being honest." Gasps flickered through the table. Cassidy blinked. That wasn't—" From across the table, a woman in a slate-gray blazer narrowed her eyes. "Wait a second. Cassidy Granger? You're the one who ghosted our procurement team mid-project?" Cassidy's mouth opened. No sound came out. The woman continued. "You left our logistics in chaos for 2 weeks. We almost pulled the contract." Alex shifted uncomfortably. His father slammed his napkin down and pushed back from the table. "This is ridiculous," he barked. "Why bring up old business at a celebration?" Logan didn't flinch. "Sometimes it's important to know what you're actually celebrating." Cassidy sat back down, visibly shaken. The brightness in her face dulled. Around the table, chatter resumed, but it was thinner now. The cracks were showing. I stood quietly and walked toward the garden. My heels clicked gently against the stone path, and I welcomed the dark stretch of grass and roses ahead. Logan followed without a word. Under the low garden lights, I turned toward him. "You didn't have to do that." He raised an eyebrow. "You think I went too far?" "No," I said, exhaling. "I think it's time they understand what real success looks like." The breeze off the marsh was cooler than I expected for a Charleston morning in late spring. I stood by the glass patio doors of our kitchen, watching the sunlight paint gold across the trees, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Brenna Calloway, a name I hadn't seen pop up in years. We weren't close, just former classmates who'd crossed paths enough times to share polite nods and Christmas card pleasantries. Brenna: "Not sure if it's true, but Cassidy's applying to Logan's company. Thought you'd want to know." I blinked. Of all the things I expected to hear that morning, that wasn't one. Cassidy? The same Cassidy who once laughed at Logan's firm for being good enough for county contracts but never legacy deals? The one who said construction was too dusty for serious money? I didn't reply right away. I just set the phone down, pressed the edge of my coffee mug against my lip, and stared out across the yard. Logan was still upstairs, getting ready for our site visit. I waited until he came down, buttoning his cufflinks, that ever-steady calm on his face. "Did you know?" I asked. He looked up. "Know what?" I passed him the phone. He read the message and gave a small sigh, half amused, half tired. "HR flagged her name yesterday. She's applying for a PR contractor role. Said she wants to help rebuild community trust." He used air quotes. I sat at the island counter, shaking my head. "She mocked every inch of what you built." He kissed my temple. "And now she's trying to join it." We didn't talk about it again until later that week. Charleston's City Development Board had invited Logan's firm to unveil a major community site, one of his proudest projects yet. It was a multi-phase library and wellness center tied directly to literacy outreach and veteran services. I had designed the children's wing, quietly, without any social media fanfare or photo ops. Logan asked if I'd come along to the unveiling. He knew I didn't like the cameras, but this wasn't about that. It was about showing up, side by side, not to prove anything, but because we'd built this together. So that morning, I tied my hair back, slid on my navy blouse, and walked out with him under the soft cloud-filtered sun, not knowing the surprise waiting for us. The construction site had been partially transformed for the event: white tenting, folding chairs, local press, and a lineup of city council members and community leaders. I stood near Logan as he greeted the mayor's liaison, a kind older woman who gave me a warm hug and whispered, "We've been hearing about your designs for months. Can't wait to walk the inside." It was a good start, until Cassidy arrived. I saw her before she saw me, stepping out of a rented black SUV, wrapped in a beige blazer that looked recently dry-cleaned, her hair pulled into a high ponytail like she was trying to erase the memory of the party last week. She wore too much perfume. I smelled it before she got within 10 feet. She strutted toward Logan with a bright smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Mr. Merritt, Logan, it's an honor. I've admired your leadership for a long time." He was cordial, professional, nodded once. Cassidy, good morning. I stepped forward from behind the column where I'd been chatting with the literacy board rep. Cassidy's eyes landed on me, and her entire face stiffened. Her smile thinned. I didn't realize you were involved, she said slowly, as if trying to rewire her reaction mid-sentence. I just returned the smile. You never asked. She laughed awkwardly. Well, I suppose congratulations are in order. You two seem to make a strong team. Logan didn't respond. Instead, he gestured to the reporters beginning to gather near the main archway. They're starting. As the ceremony opened, I stayed near the side, nodding occasionally at officials I recognized. One of the mayor's aides motioned to me. Ma'am, would you mind saying a few words? The literacy wing has your signature all over it. The community would love to hear from the architect herself. I hesitated, then saw Cassidy standing across the tent, sipping sparkling water, her eyes scanning the room, clearly wondering when she'd get her spotlight. I walked up to the podium. It's funny, I began, my voice steady, how a building begins with paper. Quiet lines, quiet thought, but it becomes a home for loud dreams. There was a soft laugh from the crowd. I continued. This project was built by hands, but more importantly, by hearts. People who care about giving children a place to believe they belong, even before the world tells them they do. A small pause. I want to thank Logan's firm not just for funding it, but for believing in something invisible first. That's real vision. When I stepped down, Cassidy didn't meet my gaze. She was too busy blinking at a reporter who'd leaned in to whisper something. I caught part of it. Wait, that's the one Alex's mom said was just a temp? At the party? Cassidy turned sharply, but the reporter had already stepped away. A few minutes later, as guests began walking the outer perimeter of the center, one of Logan's assistants, Maya, approached Cassidy with a quiet, almost apologetic smile. Ms. Green, thank you for applying, but we've filled the role. Best of luck. She handed over a small envelope. Cassidy took it without a word. Her nails were freshly manicured. Her wrist trembled slightly. We didn't linger. Logan and I thanked the city board, took a few photos near the new mural in the children's garden, then made our way back to the car. No grand exit, no confrontation, just facts, standing where pride had once been. As we pulled away from the lot, I glanced back through the side mirror. Cassidy stood by herself near the edge of the tents, envelope in hand, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Logan rested a hand on the steering wheel. She walked in wearing a mask, he said quietly. You didn't need one. I looked ahead. Let her keep it, I replied. It's all she has left. He didn't say anything, just gave a small nod as the doors closed between us and that stunned construction site. And in that silence, I felt something shift. Not loud, not flashy, but something deep and unshakable. A week later, just as Charleston's humidity softened into early spring rain, a letter arrived at our home, neatly folded inside an envelope with golden embossing. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter from my mother. Logan had brought in the mail, flipping through catalogs and bills until he stopped. He passed the envelope to me without a word. My name was written in her cursive, still elegant but sharper than I remembered. Inside, a printed invitation read, You are cordially invited to the engagement dinner of Cassidy and Alex. It would mean a lot if you came. No warmth, just those exact words. It would mean a lot. Logan raised an eyebrow, then glanced down at the invitation again. They think you'll say no. That's the performance. Look gracious on paper, let the snub carry the rest. I didn't respond at first. Just stared at the letter while the rain tapped against the kitchen window. Logan refilled our mugs with fresh coffee, waiting. I think I should go, I finally said. He looked at me, calm. For them? No, I said. For me. The restaurant was the kind of place where they folded your napkin if you so much as stood up to breathe. All dark wood, candlelight, and carefully muted jazz. I wore a deep navy dress, not flashy, but strong. Logan looked like power in a suit, but not the kind you had to announce. When we stepped in, the maitre d' glanced at the list, smiled politely, and led us. Not to the long central table under the chandelier, where Cassidy and Alex sat surrounded by investors and family. No, he led us past it, to the far corner, a round table near the swinging kitchen doors, close enough to hear the dishwashers yelling. There were no name cards, just distance. A message. Cassidy didn't look at me. Alex gave a brief nod, like I was a stranger who walked into the wrong section. My parents? They were seated with Alex's family, laughing just loud enough. Not one person from my side of life was there. No old neighbors, no cousins from Dad's side, just polished strangers in expensive suits, clinking glasses over deals I once used to hear about, before I was considered the problem. Logan leaned closer and said quietly, "They're trying to shrink you." "I know," I replied, "but it's not working." We sat, ate our salad in silence, while the others smiled at one another like they were in a holiday commercial. Occasionally, I caught glimpses. Cassidy whispering something to a woman in pearls, Alex nodding stiffly to someone clearly higher up than he was used to. My mother tossed her head back in a laugh so forced I could almost see the muscles straining. And then the toast began. My father stood. I saw Logan shift in his chair. "To my daughter," he began, raising his glass toward Cassidy, "and to Alex, a man of ambition, discipline, and vision. It's rare these days to find someone who elevates you, who brings out your best." He paused, then looked at me across the room. "Some people settle," he added, letting the words hover, "for blue collars and welding boots, but not this couple." A few forced chuckles. One man cleared his throat. Another sipped his wine a little faster than usual. Logan didn't move, just rested his hand gently on mine, but I felt the tremor in my ribs. Not of shame, not anymore. Of certainty. I stood. I didn't rush. I didn't glare. I just walked, slowly, purposefully, toward the small microphone that had been set up by the wall, ready for family remarks or maybe a musical performance someone paid for. Cassidy looked up and froze. Alex blinked. My mother's lips parted slightly, like she might object, but didn't. I tapped the mic once. The room quieted. I wasn't planning to speak tonight," I began. "But after that toast, I thought, why not?" I looked directly at my father, then turned toward the guests. "First, congratulations to Cassidy and Alex, truly. I came to wish you well, and I still do. But I won't lie just to be polite." A rustle moved through the room. I was told that marrying someone like Logan meant I had no ambition, that I'd settled. Funny word that. Settled. Especially since Logan now leads a firm with over 600 employees, and just last quarter, his company acquired a key supplier. I looked at Alex. "The same supplier your fiancé's firm depends on." A sharp inhale from someone at the table. Alex's wine glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. "So technically," I added, "my husband signs off on one of Alex's checks." Dead silence. Cassidy's face had gone nearly gray. My mother stared as if the air had been knocked out of her lungs. "I wish you well," I said again, softer, "but don't rewrite the past to make yourselves feel better about the choices you pushed me to walk away from." I stepped back from the mic. Not one clap, not one cough, just the echo of what couldn't be taken back. I walked calmly toward our table, picked up my purse. Logan was already on his feet, his expression unreadable, but steady. He opened the door, and just like that, we were gone. No more arguing, no more proving. Behind us, the room sat still, caught between champagne and shattered glass. They didn't say a word. Not that night, not the next day, not once in the week that followed. There was no phone call from my mother, no awkward text from Cassidy, not even a courtesy message from my father. You would think after a dinner like that, someone would have at least pretended to care how it landed. But nothing. The silence felt intentional, like they were hoping I'd stew in it, second-guess myself, maybe regret what I said at that mic. Instead, I slept better than I had in years. On the 7th day, early afternoon, light streaming through the blinds, I was at our kitchen table with a mug of black tea when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. The message was short. Lunch? There's something you should know. Westcott. I stared at it. Westcott. As in, the Westcott. Alex's old mentor. The man whose handshake had once gotten him into boardrooms he never earned a seat in. I turned the phone toward Logan, who was slicing pears beside me. He looked down, read it, and his brows came together like they always did when something smelled off. You think he's reaching out of the kindness of his heart? No, I said simply. I think he wants Alex to fall, and knows I'll make sure it happens clean. He wiped his hands, leaned against the counter, and crossed his arms. You're really gonna go? I nodded. If he's reaching out, there's a reason. I want to hear it. We met the next day at a quiet cafe tucked away by the marina. The place was all faded brick, sun-bleached umbrellas, and a breeze that smelled like low tide and pine wood. Westcott was already seated when I arrived. No entourage, no suit, just a worn navy blazer and tired eyes. He stood when he saw me. I wasn't sure you'd come. I sat. You weren't sure, or you were hoping I wouldn't. He gave a dry chuckle. Fair. A waitress passed by. We both declined the menus. I wasn't there to eat. I watched that dinner toast, he said. Online. Someone leaked it to a local blog. That last part, about Logan signing Alex's checks? That was a hell of a move. I didn't do it to be clever. No, he nodded. You did it because you were tired of being quiet. He reached into the inside pocket of his blazer and slid a small black folder across the table. I didn't open it yet. I waited. Alex has been playing games, he said. Not just with you, with investors, with numbers, with his own fiancé's name on the paperwork so he could duck accountability. My hands stayed still, but inside, something clenched. He leveraged her name to bypass certain audits, Westcott continued, used her as a shield. Most folks don't even realize she was co-owner on 3 of the most over-leveraged acquisitions he's made. And you're telling me this now because one of those companies, he tapped the folder, was rescued by a silent capital injection through Logan's firm, which I assume you didn't know. My throat went dry. You're saying Logan saved a company Alex nearly ruined? Yes, quietly, efficiently, and without knowing the full extent of what Alex had done to it. I finally opened the folder. Inside were scanned contracts, payment timelines, even flagged communications with red underlines. It wasn't speculation. It was evidence. Westcott folded his hands. I'm tired of men like Alex getting away with it because of their last names and their charm. It's time someone cleaned house. I stared down at the documents again. Why me? He didn't flinch. Because you know what to do with it, and you don't owe anyone the benefit of the doubt anymore. That night I sat on our back porch with the folder on my lap. The air was thick with late spring humidity. Logan stepped outside, a beer in hand, and sat beside me without a word. After a long stretch of quiet, I finally said, "Should we use this?" He didn't answer right away. Then, gently, "Only if you're ready for them to truly hate you." I looked down at my fingers, at the lines of a life that had changed so much in so little time. They already do. The next morning, I made a call to someone I hadn't spoken to since college, Maya. Once a loud, caffeine-fueled editor for the school paper, now a sharp, no-nonsense journalist who ran a financial integrity blog that had taken down more than a few powerful names. We met over coffee, no frills. I slid her the folder. "This doesn't go live until I say so," I said, "and it stays anonymous." She nodded. "You know this is the kind of thing that gets people screaming cover-up, right?" "I'm counting on it." While she got to work, Logan got busy with his end. He didn't say much, but I saw him reshuffling the supplier contracts with quiet focus. I knew that look, when he was making sure no one could wiggle through a loophole once the truth broke. 2 days later, it happened. I was halfway through reorganizing the upstairs closet when my phone pinged. Then again, and again. I looked down. Power couple or power cover-up? Local investors speak out on potential fraud. The article was sharp, factual, and devastating. No names were confirmed, but Cassidy and Alex's photo, taken at their engagement dinner, was front and center. Anonymous sources pointed to misused funds, nepotism, and reckless acquisitions. There were no accusations, just a series of undeniable questions. 30 minutes after the article went live, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from my parents. Just 2 words. "Did you do this?" I stared at it for a moment. Not a call, not a conversation, just accusation, already certain of my guilt. I didn't answer, but I did screenshot it, saved it, labeled it, expected reaction. The text from my mother still sat unopened on my phone. I didn't respond. I didn't have to, because 3 mornings later, just as I was finishing my second cup of coffee on the back porch, I heard it. A knock. Not the kind neighbors give. I set the mug down slowly. Logan glanced up from the papers spread across our patio table but didn't say a word. He knew that knock too, that unsure, hesitant rhythm, like the person behind it wasn't sure they deserved to be there. I stepped through the house and opened the front door halfway. She looked smaller, hair pulled back, but frizzed like she hadn't slept. Her blouse, once crisp and pressed in family portraits, was wrinkled around the sleeves. Her hands twisted the strap of her purse until her knuckles paled. "Can we talk?" she asked, eyes darting past me into the house. "It's about Cassidy and Alex." I didn't open the door any wider. Instead, I stepped out and let it click shut behind me. We stood on the porch. Morning sun crept through the trees, catching the edge of her necklace, the same one she wore the night she told me I would understand one day why appearances mattered. "I know you think we deserve all this," she started. I said nothing. "But Cassidy, she hasn't been eating. She's not sleeping. The wedding's postponed, her sponsors pulled out. It's been brutal, she's breaking down, and I think she needs her sister." She said that last word like it still meant something. I folded my arms, waited a moment, then said, "You praised her for marrying into money. You mocked me for marrying worth." Her lips parted, but no sound came. Just the wind brushing leaves somewhere down the street. "We didn't know he was that kind of man," she finally whispered. I looked at her. Really looked. "No," I said. "You didn't care." She flinched. I reached into my cardigan pocket and pulled out the bracelet. The gold heirloom one, once my grandmother's, the one Mom had gifted to Cassidy with a flourish, calling her the true face of our family. I placed it gently into her palm. "You gave this away before you even knew who I was," I said. She stared down at it, didn't speak, didn't move. By the time I stepped off the porch and walked around to the backyard, Logan was already folding up the documents from his morning review. "She come with flowers or just shame?" he asked dryly. "Just shame," I replied. He smirked, then passed me the folder he'd been studying. "We've got something new." Inside were notes from our legal team. Alex, predictably, was preparing a defamation suit. According to the brief, he claimed our anonymous leak had damaged his brand, compromised business deals, and defamed his character. Logan's voice was calm. "They're assembling a PR counterattack, but we've got Westcott's files and the journalist confirmed everything with multiple sources." I nodded slowly, letting it settle in. He watched me for a moment, then said, "If we go forward, there's no backing out." "What's the alternative?" "We offer one deal. Alex backs off, publicly, or we countersue, with everything." I stared down at the folder, the receipts, the contracts, the signatures. "I'm not afraid of what they'll say," I murmured. "I'm only tired of letting them." Later that night, the sky had dimmed into a soft navy. Our windows glowed warm against the twilight. I was folding laundry in the living room when the phone rang. I almost didn't recognize the number. Almost. I answered. "Hey," the voice said. For a beat, I didn't say anything. "Cassidy?" I asked. She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Did you really mean everything you said? At the dinner?" I sat slowly, the clean shirt slipping off my lap. "I meant every word," I said softly. Especially the part where I stopped apologizing for who I chose to love. There was a pause, long, and aching. "I miss having a sister," she whispered. I didn't reply. I didn't hang up either, not right away. I let the silence hold us both, not in forgiveness, but in finality. Then, without another word, I ended the call. I left the laundry where it was and walked outside to the garden. Logan was there, watering the basil we'd planted last spring. He looked up as I stepped out. "She called," I said. He shut the hose off, and I tucked my hands into my sweater sleeves. "She misses having a sister." He studied me, quiet. I smiled faintly. "I don't miss being one." Logan didn't say anything when I said it, just gave a small nod, as if he knew that line. "I don't miss being one" wasn't meant to be cruel. It was a truth I'd carried quietly for years, a door I'd closed so softly no one noticed it had locked. 2 weeks passed. In that time, Cassidy stayed silent. No calls, no posts. The internet had chewed through her influencer persona like wolves on a wounded deer, and Alex, true to form, decided to go down swinging. I was at an old coffee shop off Calhoun Street, one I used to work at in high school. Funny how life circles back to remind you who you were before people tried to decide who you should be. I'd just ordered a plain black coffee, no sugar, no cream, my small rebellion against anything that looked pretty on the surface. Then I felt the tap on my shoulder. He was tall, thin, wore a pressed navy jacket and the kind of forced smile lawyers probably practice in the mirror. "Are you Miss Marin?" "Yes," I said, turning fully. My voice didn't even shake. "You've been served." He handed me a manila envelope like it was a party invitation. "Civil lawsuit. Plaintiff, Alexander G. Bensley." The barista, a girl with a pierced nose, gasped, loud enough for heads to turn. I didn't flinch, didn't ask questions, just took out my phone and sent Logan one text. "It's on." That evening, our living room turned into a war room. Logan brought out the files, hard copies, not just digital backups. The journalist who'd written the exposé, Eli Reston, showed up in worn boots and a wool coat smelling faintly of ink. He was as calm as ever, unbothered by lawsuits or threats. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't blink. We didn't rehearse. We didn't have to. The courthouse in Charleston sits like a monument to stories people try to bury. Cream columns, stone steps, a chill in the air that wasn't weather. It was tension dressed in a suit. I walked in between Logan and Eli. No entourage, no theatrics, just us. Cassidy was already seated at the plaintiff's table. Her hair was pulled too tightly, makeup covering more than just blemishes. Next to her, Alex sat smug, checking his nails. Their attorney, a man who looked like he practiced his smirks along with his briefs, stood tall with a binder the thickness of his ego. Our parents were seated in the second row. My father looked away as I passed. My mother didn't. I took my seat. The bailiff called the room to order. The judge, an older black woman with eyes that had clearly seen too many families fall apart over pride and greed, glanced down at the docket. Her voice was even, clipped. "Civil case number 18-12-69, Bensley versus Marin, alleged defamation and damages. Let's begin." Alex's side went first. Their lawyer waxed poetic about character assassination, malicious publication, and irreparable harm. He motioned to Cassidy as if she were a porcelain doll someone had shattered with a tweet. Then it was Logan's turn. He stood calmly. "Your Honor, our position is simple. Truth is not defamation. What was published is supported by hard evidence, independent sourcing, and whistleblower protections under federal law." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't posture. He just walked the room through every page. Offshore accounts, misappropriated funds, threats to silence junior employees. Exhibit after exhibit. Then Eli stepped forward with a USB drive. "We obtained verbal testimony from a former intern, recorded with consent. Your Honor, the file is time-stamped and validated for journalistic use?" She nodded. The audio played. Alex's voice, unmistakable, snapped through the room. "If they want to keep their job, they'll shut up and smile." The gallery gasped. Cassidy stared down at her lap. The plaintiff's attorney objected on grounds of prejudicial influence. The judge waved him off. "Sit down. The defendant is exercising her right to defense with properly submitted evidence." Then came the moment I hadn't prepared for: cross-examination. Cassidy took the stand. The lawyer, our side, didn't go in hard, just asked, "Mrs. Bensley, were you aware of your husband's financial dealings with these accounts?" She didn't answer right away. "Did you know he was leveraging your image and influence to lure small investors?" Her bottom lip trembled. "I didn't," she said, voice cracking. "I didn't know all that. I thought I finally had what Mom and Dad wanted, a picture-perfect life." She looked at me then, but I didn't move. Her eyes searched for something I no longer carried. Sympathy, maybe? Sisterhood? I'd left those behind. The judge tapped her gavel softly. "Mrs. Bensley, please step down." Then she turned to Alex. "This court dismisses the plaintiff's claim with prejudice. The evidence supports a credible whistleblower origin. The publication in question falls under protected journalistic freedom and responsible reporting." She paused. "To use litigation to punish truth is not just misuse of the legal system, it is moral cowardice." Alex stood abruptly. His chair screeched across the floor. He shoved the courtroom doors open and vanished without a word. Cassidy didn't move. She just sat there, frozen, like a photograph left too long in the sun. Colors faded, image warped. Outside, the sky had started to drizzle. Logan held the umbrella as we walked down the courthouse steps. Neither of us spoke. From the corner of my eye, I saw my mother watching from the sidewalk. Her face was unreadable. She didn't approach. Cassidy just stared, broken. And I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Her silence was enough. The judge's gavel had echoed through the courtroom like the closing of a long, bitter chapter. A week passed. Not much changed in the world, but inside me, something had settled. Not peace, exactly, but a kind of stillness. Like when a storm passes and the trees, though battered, finally stop swaying. I pulled into the gravel driveway of the house I once called home. The crunch beneath my tires was the same, but everything else felt foreign. The porch swing still hung, slightly crooked. My mother had always said she'd fix it. She never did. I stood on the porch for a moment before unlocking the front door one last time. Inside, it was quiet. Not empty, just quiet. The kind of quiet that presses into your chest. I walked through the hallway slowly, my fingers grazing the ridged wallpaper we once chose together. Family portraits lined the walls, ones I hadn't looked at in years. In one, I was maybe 6, holding a crooked paper crown. Cassidy stood next to me, grinning, frosting on her chin. Mom and Dad behind us, smiling like everything was fine. I kept walking. Past the den, past the old piano no one played anymore. On the kitchen table there was a single sheet of paper. My father's handwriting, stiff and careful, like always. "I'm sorry I didn't protect you." Dad. No flourish, no excuses, just that. I read it once, then again. And then I took the house keys from my bag and laid them on top of the letter. I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. I just stood there for a moment, breathing in that faint scent of lemon polish and old fabric. And then I turned toward the door. Cassidy was waiting outside in her car. I didn't expect her, but somehow I wasn't surprised. She stepped out as I came down the front steps. No makeup. Hair pulled back. A little older than I remembered, or maybe just more honest. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "About all of it. I really didn't. I thought he was my shot at finally being seen." Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. She looked like someone trying to apologize and hold herself together at the same time. I looked at her, not with pity, not with anger, just understanding. "You don't have to be seen through anyone else," I said. She nodded. I didn't know how to not chase it. "I get it." We stood there, 2 women who'd once been girls on that porch, racing to see who could tie their shoes fastest. Now neither of us had anything left to prove. I opened my arms. She hesitated, then walked in. The hug was short, gentle, Not quite healing, but human. She stepped back first. "Thank you." I didn't answer. I just walked to my car. Later that afternoon, I met Logan by the lake, the same spot where he'd proposed under a blue sky that felt too big for words. The water was still, almost glass, the kind of quiet you lean into. He was already there, sitting on the dock with 2 coffees beside him. He didn't stand when I walked over, just patted the spot next to him. I sat. "You," he said, handing me the coffee, "are now officially the most underpaid boss in the Southeast." I laughed. "Is that so?" "Absolutely. But also the fiercest, and probably the only one who's survived a defamation suit, a family implosion, and Cassidy McLean all in the same quarter." "Survival's a perk," I said, taking a sip. He turned toward me, serious now. "You okay?" I looked out at the water. "I think I will be." We sat in silence for a while. Then he said, "I've been thinking, what if we open that workshop we talked about, the one for training young tradespeople? Start with welding, maybe plumbing. Focus on women, single moms, people no one ever bets on." I smiled. "You mean build something that actually matters?" He nodded. "Exactly." I looked over at him, the man who'd stood beside me through every bit of this mess. "You're still my best decision." He didn't say anything, just reached for my hand and held it. The sun was starting to dip behind the trees. Gold spilled across the lake like someone had opened a secret door to something softer. I took a deep breath. Sometimes the loudest revenge is silence, when you stop asking to be chosen, when you walk away, not in bitterness, but in clarity, when you no longer explain, justify, or wait for recognition that may never come. You just leave the keys on the table, and you never, ever look back.